Hey everybody, welcome back for library this week. We are going to continue with our I Survived. We're going to be listening to chapter 7 and 8. If you listened before, you know we were just hearing the firsthand experience from what Uncle Benny was seeing when the planes were first coming down, and that's where we're picking up. All right, so I have our book ready to stream. Okay. We're going to be listening to chapter 7 and 8. Chapter 7 is only 3 minutes. So if chapter 8 is also short, maybe we'll listen to 3 chapters. All right. So I will begin here in a moment. Let's go.
Chapter 7. It looks like Tower 1, Uncle Benny was saying, his phone pressed to his ear as he and Lucas ran back to the firehouse. The North Tower. No, not a small plane. It was a jet. A big jet. Yes, I'm sure. He was shouting now. I saw it with my own eyes. Lucas kept glancing back, each time hoping that the tower would be magically healed. But each time he looked, there was more and more black smoke. The sound of sirens filled the air. Get ready, Uncle Benny was saying. We're going to need everything we have. There has to be at least 10 floors of fire. 10 floors of fire. Dad had told Lucas that every floor of the Twin Towers was about the size of a football field. Lucas tried to imagine what 10 football fields would look like, each one on fire. How many firefighters would it take to put those fires out? And what if each of those fires was almost a quarter mile in the air? That's how high the towers were. Lucas knew how much firefighters hated high-rises. Elevators were usually too dangerous to use in a fire. They could stop working suddenly and fill up with smoke. But the only other choice was to lug heavy hoses and 50 pounds of gear up endless flights of stairs. Georgie once told Lucas that it could take 2 minutes for a firefighter to walk up just one flight of stairs. Lucas looked back at the tower. That fire was near the top, maybe the 80th or 90th floor. That meant it could be 2 hours before firefighters could get there. Could the people on those floors wait that long for help? The Seagrave was already out of the garage when Lucas and Uncle Benny got back to the firehouse. Georgie was at the wheel. Men from both shifts were piled on. Benny ran over to grab his turnout clothes and helmet. Lucas followed after him. Uncle Benny, he said, what will you do? Uncle Benny stepped into his bunker pants and boots. We'll do what we always do, he said. He put his hand on Lucas's head for a moment, then ran to the truck. Chief Douglas called out to Lucas from the truck. Your dad is heading to the scene, he said. You sit tight. Take care of things for us, buddy, Uncle Benny said. The truck pulled away.
Gianna Matthews, please report to the office for a message. Gianna Matthews, please report to the office for a message. Thank you.
Sorry, guys, we had an announcement. Here we go.
Siren wailing. The garage door shut. And Lucas stood there in shock, alone. He ran to the phone and called Mom. She didn't answer. He left a message, struggling to keep his voice from cracking, that he was at the firehouse, that he was fine, that she should call him. He hung up and stood there, his mind spinning. Uncle Benny's words whispered in his head. We'll do what we always do. What they always did. Fight fires. Save people's lives. Yes, that's what they'd do now. The FDNY was the biggest fire department in the world. They were the best, and they would do what they always did. Chapter 8, 9:00 a.m. Dad once told Lucas that what he liked most about fighting fires was that everyone had a job to do. If you don't work together, you don't put out the fire. Now, Lucas looked around the firehouse. He needed a job, he realized, something he could do to help. He went into the kitchen. The table was covered with plates of half-eaten bacon and eggs. The sink was overflowing with dirty pots. He got to work, clearing the dishes and glasses from the table. Every few minutes, the alarm box squawked, and the dispatcher came on with a new alarm. "All units meet at Vesey and West Streets." The TV was on the counter, the sound turned down. The picture on the screen showed the burning tower. Lucas reached out and turned the volume up so he could hear it over the voice of the dispatcher. "If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen," the TV man's voice said, "you're looking at an extraordinary sight. Just a few minutes ago, a plane crashed into Tower 1 at New York's famed World Trade Center. We have no official information about what kind of plane it was, but witnesses report it was a commercial jet." Lucas picked up Georgie's huge cast-iron skillet and started scrubbing. "The towers were built in 1970, the man continued. At 110 floors each, they were once the tallest buildings in the world. There are hundreds of firefighters on the scene. We have reports that firefighters have been entering the building and heading up the stairs to reach people who might need assistance. It's an amazing sight." The smoke was thicker now, painting the blue sky a dirty brown. There were white dots floating in the smoke, almost like confetti. Paper, Lucas realized. Millions of pieces of paper, swept out through the hole in the building. The man kept talking about the towers, that they took 4 years to build, that they could withstand winds of 140 miles per hour, that 50,000 people worked there. His voice was calm, almost like a teacher giving a history lesson. Lucas was reaching up to hang the heavy skillet on the hook over the sink. Suddenly, the man on the TV gasped. "Oh my God! What was that? Another explosion! Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like a second plane. Yes, another jet. It has just crashed into the second tower." The heavy skillet slipped out of Lucas's hand and into the sink, shattering plates and glasses. Lucas barely noticed. His eyes did not move from the TV screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man said again, his voice shaking, "I'm going to replay the video of what we just saw." The screen flipped. It showed the North Tower burning. And then suddenly, on the left side of the screen, another plane appeared. Just like the first, it was a big jet. And quick as a blink, it slammed into the other tower, exploding into a fireball. Fire erupted out of all sides of the building, a ring of flaming blackness. Now there were 2 clouds of churning black smoke. Lucas's heart pounded. It was hard to breathe. There were more people talking on the TV now, not just the man. Oh my, that looked," one woman said. "What did we just see?" said another. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man said, "we have just witnessed the horrific sight of a second plane hitting the other tower, the South Tower. There was a massive explosion." "There must be a computer problem, a complete failure of the air traffic control system," said the first woman. What the man said next made Lucas's entire body start to shake. "That did not look like an accident," he said. "It looks like that plane flew into that tower on purpose. I think this is some kind of attack." Chapter 9. Lucas tried calling Mom again. Now, when he called, he got a fast busy signal and a recording. "All circuits are busy." He tried Dad's phone. Same thing. He dialed over and over. Mom, Dad, Mom, Dad. He just kept getting the busy signal. The department radio crackled. "Recall, recall," the dispatcher said. "All personnel, on duty and off, are to report. I repeat, this is a recall of all emergency personnel." There were 11,000 firefighters in the department. They needed every single one. Before Lucas knew what he was doing, he had run out into the street. He couldn't be alone, watching the world fall apart on TV. He needed to find Dad and Uncle Benny and the rest of the men. He wanted to be with them. He knew he wasn't thinking clearly. He didn't know if he'd even be able to get close to where they were, if it was even safe to try. But he went anyway. Some kind of attack. Some kind of attack. Was that man on TV right? What did that even mean? Who was attacking? Did he mean that those planes had hit the towers on purpose? The thought hadn't even come into Lucas's mind when he saw the first plane hit. But thinking about it now, of course, that was the only thing that made sense. The day was so perfectly clear. There was no way that 2 airplanes could have hit the towers unless they had been aiming right for them. But who could be insane enough, evil enough, to fly planes into buildings? Lucas wiped away the tears running down his face. He wove through the crowds of people on the sidewalk. Some were running north, but most seemed like they were in shock, standing there dazed, staring at the fires above them. The only noise was sirens, hundreds of them, honking and screaming, wailing and shrieking and blaring. The sounds all crashed together into one terrible song. A crowd of people huddled around something in the middle of the street. Lucas slowed down and looked. It was a big tire attached to a tangle of metal. It didn't look like the tire of a car or a truck. "What is that?" a woman said. "It's part of a plane," said a man. "It's landing gear." Lucas looked away. He pushed through the crowd, heading south. Vesey and West Streets. That's where the staging area was, where the firefighters were gathering. If Dad had made it here from Randall's Island, that's where Lucas would find him. He would look for the Seagrave. He would wait there for Dad. Lucas inched through the crowd. Most people were standing still, watching. But now, there were more people coming from the direction of the towers. Some of them were soaked in sweat, their clothes tattered. But it was the looks on their faces, stunned and horrified, that told Lucas where they had come from. Inside the towers. There were dozens and dozens of them, some walking alone, others holding hands. Some of the women were barefoot. He imagined their high-heeled shoes kicked into the corners of the stairwells. Nobody was carrying a purse or a briefcase. And Lucas understood why. He'd heard many stories about people who had survived fires and explosions and collapses. So many times they'd escaped with not a second to spare. If they had stopped for anything, to grab a purse or tie a shoe, they wouldn't have made it. A policeman up ahead was trying to stop people from moving south. "Everyone, please leave this area," he shouted. "It's not safe. Please leave this area and head north." But Lucas kept walking, and nobody tried to stop him. He felt invisible. Ladder 177 had to be one of the first units to get to the towers. That meant they'd be the closest. Lucas was still 3 blocks away when he felt a hand on his shoulder. "Hey," a young policeman said. "Where are you going? Are you lost?" "I need to find..." And before he could get the words out, he heard someone calling his name. "Lucas!" His name rose up over all of the sirens. "Dad!" And there was his dad, pushing through the crowd. He grabbed Lucas and held him tight. For a few seconds, Lucas couldn't hear the sirens.
Hey.
All he could hear was the beating of Dad's heart.
All right. So the story's getting really good now. But wait till next week to hear what happens. We actually listened to an extra chapter. So we'll be listening to chapter 10 and 11. I'm so relieved that Lucas was able to see his dad because I wasn't sure for a second. if that was going to happen when the police officer stopped him. So I'll see you guys next week. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will listen again. Bye.